The morning started like any other for Kazushige Sanda, a 14-year-old class representative at his academy. He arrived early at school alongside his co-class rep, Shirori Fuyumura, ready to tackle their daily duties together. The two worked in comfortable silence, cleaning the gunk from the window track that always caused it to stick. It was a routine they'd established over the past 8 months of working together. But then, everything changed in an instant. Without warning, Fuyumura straddled Sanda and pinned him down with shocking strength. Her cold expression remained unchanged as she delivered a chilling message. "You should watch your back today. At some point I will kill you." Sanda's mind raced with confusion. Just moments ago, they had been working together peacefully. What could he have possibly done to provoke such a terrifying threat? He desperately searched his memory for any offense, any mistake that might have triggered this sudden aggression. Had he done a half-hearted job cleaning the windows? Was she angry about something he'd said? As other students began arriving for the day, greeting the early rising class reps cheerfully, the surreal nature of the situation only intensified. Fuyumura maintained her threatening demeanor, while Sanda remained completely bewildered. In his 14 years of life, he'd never experienced anything quite like this terrifying morning encounter. After Fuyumura left, Sanda's confusion transformed into hopeful speculation. Perhaps, he reasoned, this bizarre threat was actually a sign of affection. After all, they'd been working as co-class reps together for 8 months now, and he'd never once seen her smile. Maybe puberty affected girls the same way it affected boys, making them awkward and unable to express their true feelings properly. Sanda convinced himself that he'd cracked the code. "You should watch your back today because I will kill you." Translated through the lens of teenage awkwardness, obviously meant, "Before the day's over, I'll confess my true feelings." It made perfect sense to him. She wanted to make him her boyfriend, and this was simply her clumsy way of expressing it. This might be the greatest day of his 14 years on Earth. His friend, however, saw things very differently. When Sanda excitedly shared his theory, his friend bluntly pointed out the obvious. If someone has a big knife and tries to stab you, they actually want to kill you. He urged Sanda to tell a teacher about the threat immediately. But Sanda refused to involve the teachers, insisting that Fuyumura was just shy and he didn't want to ruin the moment for her. His friend grew more serious, asking Sanda if he had any idea what mental state Fuyumura must be in right now. That's when Sanda learned the devastating truth. Fuyumura's best friend, a girl named Ono, had been declared dead just 1 week ago. She had vanished 6 months prior, and when authorities couldn't find her, they'd officially written her off as deceased. Sanda had no idea the two girls had been that close, but his friend confirmed they were practically inseparable, joined at the hip. This revelation gave Sanda even more reason to support Fuyumura. If she was grieving the loss of her best friend, then of course she needed someone to be there for her during this difficult time. His friend strongly advised him to avoid being alone with Fuyumura that day, warning that her mental state was clearly unstable. But Sanda's mind was made up. He would be there for her, no matter what. As the boys talked outside, they noticed something unusual about the weather. Despite being late December, the temperature had dropped to an extreme cold rarely experienced in their region. Sanda's friend mentioned that such cold weather used to be normal in the old days, but climate changes had made it exceptional now. Then his friend brought up something Sanda had never heard of: Christmas. Today was December 25th, a date that once held special significance. Long ago, it had been a day when children received presents from a figure called Santa, some big old dude with a white beard. The tradition had faded into obscurity, just another forgotten legend from a bygone era. As they stood there discussing this strange piece of history, something magical happened. Snow began to fall from the sky. Real snow, not the synthetic kind. The sight was breathtaking, a phenomenon they'd rarely witnessed in person. But then, without warning, Sanda felt something wrong. A sharp pain struck his chest, and his heart began pounding wildly. The sensation was overwhelming, as if his heart might burst. He couldn't understand what was happening to him. Was this what it felt like when you met the person you were destined to be with? Could Fuyumura really be his soulmate? During the class representative meeting that followed, Sanda still felt unwell from his earlier episode. Despite his discomfort, he attended the meeting. He wasn't the type to chicken out. Fuyumura seemed surprisingly calm, almost as if the morning's death threat had never happened. Then she asked him for his eraser, claiming she'd forgotten hers. As Sanda handed it over, Fuyumura asked him a strange question. Why was he being so nice to her after she'd threatened him? Was it because he was a descendant of Santa Claus? Sanda had no idea what she was talking about. Fuyumura continued with her bizarre theory, pointing out that he always refused to wear their academy's red tracksuit. She suggested it was because he was afraid others would discover his secret heritage. But Fuyumura's explanation grew even stranger. She told him that he met most of the conditions necessary to break an ancient curse. On a snowy December 25th, he'd shown affection and kindness to a child while ignoring danger to himself. He'd also given a child something they asked for, the eraser. These two acts were just the beginning of awakening his latent abilities. She explained that sometimes people experience sudden illness and heart palpitations, exactly what Sanda had felt earlier. For most people, these were simply signs of poor health. But sometimes, they indicated that dormant abilities were about to manifest. Most people dismissed these symptoms and never reached their true potential. According to Fuyumura, there was one final condition Sanda needed to meet to fully break his curse and unlock his powers as Santa Claus. He had to wear something red. Only then would his transformation be complete, revealing his true nature as a descendant of the legendary gift giver. Sanda couldn't believe what he was hearing. He vehemently denied Fuyumura's entire theory, insisting he had no idea what she was talking about. A gift? A child? She was blowing everything completely out of proportion. Santa Claus was just a stupid legend, a fairy tale with no basis in reality. The truth, Sanda insisted, was much simpler and more personal. He'd been kind to her because he had a crush on her. For months, he'd been waiting for the perfect moment to confess his feelings. But thanks to her crazy Santa Claus theory, she'd completely ruined the romantic moment he'd been planning. He demanded she give him back his heart, metaphorically speaking, of course. But Fuyumura remained unmoved by his emotional outburst. She calmly told him that he didn't know what he was talking about. Everything he did because of his instincts as Santa Claus. She tried to convince him to put on a red jacket so they could talk properly and confirm the transformation. Sanda absolutely refused. He hated the color red, and besides, why was Fuyumura so obsessed with this whole Santa Claus thing? What was driving her to pursue this insane theory with such determination? Her behavior made no sense, and his frustration was reaching a breaking point. He wanted answers about her strange fixation, not more cryptic statements about curses and transformations. Fuyumura's expression hardened. If Sanda wouldn't cooperate willingly, she would force the transformation another way. Before he could react, she pulled out a knife and stabbed him. Sanda couldn't believe it. She'd actually stabbed him. The pain was sharp and immediate, and as his blood began to flow, it stained his clothes red. His white shirt became soaked with crimson, fulfilling the final condition of the curse whether he wanted it to or not. The transformation began almost immediately. Sanda's body felt strange, changing in ways he couldn't comprehend. Something supernatural was happening to him, something that defied all logic and reason. The curse that Fuyumura had spoken of was real, and now it was manifesting before their eyes. As the transformation took hold, snow continued to fall outside the window, creating an almost magical atmosphere. The December 25th snowfall, the act of kindness, the gift given freely, and now the color red, all the conditions had been met. Kazushige Sanda was about to discover that his family's hidden legacy was far more real than he'd ever imagined, and that fairy tales sometimes had a basis in truth after all. As Sanda underwent his transformation, memories that weren't his own seemed to flood Fuyumura's mind. Or perhaps she was simply remembering what had driven her to this desperate act. The image of Ono appeared, vivid and heartbreaking. Ono had been a special person, someone who saw beauty in everything around her. One day, she'd told Fuyumura how much she loved her name. "Shiori Fuyumura, that's such an amazing name," Ono had said with genuine admiration. She'd explained that long before they were born, Japan had experienced 4 distinct seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. The scenery used to change dramatically with each season, creating a tapestry of different landscapes throughout the year. Fuyumura, with her quiet demeanor and snow-white skin, perfectly embodied her surname's meaning of Winter Village. But Ono saw something deeper in her friend. Despite Fuyumura's cold exterior, she had expressions as varied and colorful as those lost seasons. When they spent time together, Ono got to experience all 4 seasons through Fuyumura's subtle emotional changes. She found her friend endlessly fascinating, a person of hidden depths and unexpected warmth beneath a frozen surface. On that day, Ono had given Fuyumura a Christmas present, explaining the old tradition that almost no one remembered anymore. She was the only person Fuyumura had ever met who still clung to these forgotten customs. Though Fuyumura hadn't prepared anything in return, Ono didn't mind. She made Fuyumura promise something simple. Next year, they would spend December 25th together again. They would wish each other a Merry Christmas, and exchange presents properly. It was a promise Fuyumura had desperately wanted to keep. But then Ono vanished, and that promise remained unfulfilled. As Sanda's transformation progressed, Fuyumura's desperation became clear. She wasn't acting out of madness or cruelty. She was driven by hope, however slim it might be. She revealed her true belief: Ono wasn't dead. Either someone from their school was holding her prisoner, or she was truly gone, but Fuyumura couldn't accept the latter possibility. She needed Santa Claus, needed him desperately. The legendary figure was capable of awesome things, possessing powers beyond normal human limitations. That kind of power was exactly what she required to find Ono. Without it, she had no hope of ever seeing her best friend again. Fuyumura's voice cracked with emotion as she pleaded with Sanda. She didn't want him to die during the transformation. If he died, she'd be screwed. He was her only hope. She couldn't give up on finding Ono because giving up meant accepting that her friend was truly dead. That was something Fuyumura absolutely refused to do. She'd made a promise, after all. She'd told Ono they would spend Christmas together this year. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here it was, December 25th, and snow was falling from the sky for the first time in ages. Ono would have loved to see it. She would have been so happy to experience real snow on Christmas Day, the holiday she cherished so much. Fuyumura had wanted to give her a present, to fulfill their mutual promise properly. But most of all, she just missed her friend terribly. The absence of Ono's presence had left a void in her life that nothing could fill. Every day without her was torture, and Fuyumura would do anything, even force an unwilling boy to awaken a dangerous curse, if it meant having even the slightest chance of bringing Ono back. Sanda's transformation completed fully, and where a 14-year-old boy had stood moments before, there was now a massive, bearded man in red. He towered over Fuyumura, his adult body a stark contrast to his teenage form. Everything about him had changed: his height, his build, his face, even his voice. Looking at Fuyumura, at her desperate hope and her determination to find her missing friend, something shifted within Sanda. Whether it was his own feelings or Santa Claus's instincts, he couldn't tell anymore. But he knew what needed to be said. "Merry Christmas," he spoke in his deep, transformed voice, the words directed not at Fuyumura but at the absent Ono. It was an acknowledgement of the promise that had been broken, and a declaration that it would be fulfilled. Sanda's grandfather appeared briefly, shocked and dismayed. He thought the Sanda family curse would be locked away with him, but somehow it had awakened in his grandson after all. The immediate aftermath of the transformation was chaotic. Sanda had apparently caused significant damage to the building during his change, and students were evacuating in panic. In the confusion, Sanda locked himself in a bathroom, trying to process what had happened to him. Looking in the mirror, he was confronted with a stranger's face. His vision had changed too. He could see clearly at a distance, but everything up close was blurry, some condition he vaguely remembered reading about. But more distressing than the vision problems was his appearance. Gone was his smooth, cute face that had earned him the nickname Happy Cheeks. His voice hadn't even changed yet in his normal form. He'd been such a cute kid. But now he was rugged, bearded, and decidedly not cute. Who was he anymore? His entire identity had been built around being young and adorable, and now that was gone. Fuyumura found him and urged him to hurry up. The building was in chaos, but in all the confusion, no one would notice a half-naked old man wandering the halls. She seemed completely unconcerned with his existential crisis. Sanda panicked about being stuck this way forever. What if he couldn't change back? If he was permanently a big, burly Santa Claus, his life would be absolute hell. He was still 14 on the inside. In his agitation, he reached for his comfort food, bratty beans, a junk food snack he'd been eating forever. They always helped calm him down when he got angry, like cigarettes for adults. As he chewed the additive-filled, nutritionally void snack, something miraculous happened. His vision cleared for close-up objects, and moments later, he transformed back into his teenage self. The bratty beans were the key to reversing the transformation. Classes resumed in the science lab since the previous classroom had been damaged. The teacher attributed the explosion to the old building's structural problems and quickly moved on with the lesson. Everything seemed to be returning to normal, but Fuyumura had other plans. During class, Sanda confided his concerns to her. Yes, he'd promised to help find Ono, but he had no idea how to actually be useful. He'd discovered he was a descendant of Santa Claus, but he didn't know what abilities he possessed or how to control them. There was no guarantee when or if he'd transform again. Honestly, he was freaking out about the whole situation. Fuyumura listened calmly, then revealed her solution. She'd already formulated a plan to test his abilities. She informed him, matter-of-factly, that she'd planted a bomb somewhere in the classroom. It was set to explode in exactly 1 hour. Sanda had several options, she explained. He could use his powers to locate the bomb. He could evacuate everyone from the room. He could force her to reveal its location. Or he could simply sit back and wait for it to explode. The choice was his, but the lives of their 22 classmates should provide sufficient motivation to figure something out. Sanda was horrified, but he knew from experience that Fuyumura wasn't bluffing. She'd already stabbed him once today. A bomb threat wasn't beyond her capabilities. He tried to warn the class immediately, standing up and announcing that there was a bomb in the room and everyone needed to evacuate. But his approach was all wrong. The teacher told him not to interrupt the lesson, and his friend assumed he was just trying to get out of a quiz he hadn't studied for. No one took his warning seriously, and Sanda realized he'd have to find another way to handle the situation. The clock was ticking, and he had less than an hour to figure out his Santa Claus abilities. With no other choice, Sanda decided he'd have to search for the bomb himself. He told the teacher he'd spilled a box of thumbtacks earlier, and needed to check the floor to make sure no one would get hurt. The teacher, impressed by his dedication to his classmates' safety, gave him permission. As Sanda crawled around the floor, he felt increasingly foolish. The bomb obviously wouldn't be sitting out in the open. He needed to use his head and think strategically. But the situation was made even more surreal by that day's lesson topic. The teacher had asked everyone to write an essay about their wishes. The irony was almost painful. Here was the descendant of Santa Claus, the legendary figure who granted children's wishes, and he was completely useless. Everyone around him was focused on their assignments, thinking carefully about their wishes and writing them down. The real Santa Claus was right there in the room with them, but he couldn't help anyone, not even himself. Sanda desperately wished he could be like everyone else, working normally on the assignment without the weight of his secret identity and this life-or-death situation bearing down on him. But there was no going back to being a regular student anymore. That innocent life was over the moment Fuyumura had forced his transformation. He hated that his secret identity was some fat old geezer who couldn't even keep his promises. What was the point of having a Santa Claus curse if he couldn't actually do anything with it? He needed to think, how would the real Santa Claus handle a situation like this? Fuyumura confirmed his discovery with a calm nod. She was as serious as a heart attack, she told him. This test hadn't been a joke at all. A Santa Claus who couldn't save a roomful of kids from a simple bomb wouldn't be any use to her in finding Ono. If he'd failed, she would have searched for her friend herself, accepting whatever consequences came from the explosion. Sanda was horrified by her logic. If she'd actually detonated the bomb, it would have killed the entire class, including her. How could she be so reckless with human life, including her own? But Fuyumura had no patience for hypothetical concerns. She hated people who constantly complained about things that never happened. Adults did that a lot, she noted with disdain. In the end, no one had died. He should be happy about that rather than worrying about what might have been. Sanda was stunned by her callousness. Deep down, she was nothing but a rotten little brat. But then Fuyumura asked him a question that had been bothering her. How had he known she had the bomb? She'd hidden it well, and he'd shown no signs of searching her specifically until the very end. Sanda explained his reasoning. During the assignment, he'd been able to hear everyone writing down their wishes, the scratch of pencils on paper, the thoughtful pauses, the occasional erasures. Everyone except Fuyumura. She'd been completely silent. He didn't know if it was how the real Santa Claus was supposed to feel, but if there was a child who couldn't think of a wish, he believed Santa would be worried sick about them. Especially in Fuyumura's case, with everything she was going through worrying about Ono. That had to be incredibly hard for her. It's why he'd focused his attention on her specifically. Fuyumura's tough exterior finally showed cracks. She admitted quietly that she couldn't write what she wanted. The fear of losing Ono, of having already lost her, was so much bigger than any happiness she'd felt when they were together. That fear paralyzed her, made it impossible to wish for anything else. Sanda's response came from somewhere deep inside, whether from his own heart or Santa's instincts, he still couldn't tell. But the words felt right as he spoke them. The fear of loss might be overwhelming now, but the happiness she'd feel when she finally saw Ono again would be even bigger. It would dwarf everything else. The time Fuyumura had spent with Ono was the most precious in the world, wasn't it? Those memories, that friendship, they were worth fighting for. So that's what they were going to do, get that back. They were going to find Ono and return those precious moments to Fuyumura's life. For a moment, something like hope flickered across Fuyumura's usually expressionless face. But then Sanda's eyes widened in sudden panic. In their emotional conversation, he'd completely forgotten the immediate danger. Had she deactivated the bomb during their talk? The answer came swiftly, she hadn't. The device was still active, and time had run out. The bomb exploded with tremendous force, engulfing them both in flames and destruction. In that split second, Sanda's only thought was protecting Fuyumura, grabbing the explosive device and pulling it toward himself. If these were his last moments, at least he'd die trying to keep his promise. At least he'd die as Santa Claus, protecting a child who needed him. When the smoke cleared, Sanda was still standing. Burned, battered, but alive. The flames that should have killed him had left him relatively unharmed. His Santa Claus form had protected him from the worst of the blast. Fuyumura observed this outcome with clinical interest, processing what she'd just witnessed. Through this test, she'd now confirmed 3 distinct abilities that Santa Claus possessed. First, he could transform from his normal teenage form into an adult Santa Claus by wearing something red. The transformation was complete and dramatic, changing everything about his physical appearance and capabilities. Second, eating bratty beans, those junk food snacks Sanda was addicted to, reversed the transformation, returning him to his normal 14-year-old body. It was an unusual trigger, but a reliable one. And third, fire couldn't hurt him. Santa Claus was immune to flames, able to withstand intense heat that would kill a normal person. This made sense given the legend of Santa coming down chimneys, navigating fireplaces without harm. Though, as Sanda noted while looking at the destruction around them, This particular fire had gone considerably beyond a normal fireplace. Sanda looked at Fuyumura, seeing her not as the cold, threatening presence from that morning, but as the desperate, grieving child she truly was. He'd complained and resisted, but now he understood. Now he was committed. He declared his promise with newfound conviction. He would come down the chimney with her presence, shrugging off fire like it was nothing. That was a promise from Santa Claus himself. Together, they would find Ono, no matter what it took. Christmas wasn't over yet.